Hi, welcome to Album Soup, where we talk about the ingredients, influences, and genres that influence a particular album. In this episode, we're going to be talking about two albums, as a matter of fact, Mac DeMarco's 2 and Salad Days. And I recognize this is a bit of a unique pick. So far on this channel, I've been trying to focus on albums that really have a very obvious blend of very different sounds going on, such as In the Airplane Over the Sea or The Ooze. And in this episode, I'm talking about an album that certainly has a very characteristic and identifiable unique sound, but Mac DeMarco's influences aren't quite as obvious. And yet, just like those other artists that I've talked about in the past, his influences are just as varied and as interesting. And that signature sound that he's known for, especially on his earlier work, is a lot more complex and nuanced than it might appear. So, without further ado, I'm going to get into the influences that shaped 2 and Salad Days. So first up, I'm talking about 70s rock. And I actually made this a two-parter on my TikTok and Instagram just because there are so many 70s albums that Mac DeMarco really loves, and I think the more you listen to him, the more you can hear that he really is a 70s baby at heart. So the first album I'm going to recommend if you want to get into Mac DeMarco's taste is Harvest by Neil Young. This is an incredible album. Mac has said that he wants to make something that sounds like this. It's been a goal for him. I'm not surprised. Neil Young is one of the most famous Canadian artists, so Mac being Canadian, looking up to him is not something that shocks me, and yet this album is very subtle and yet still very emotionally moving. So even though Matt doesn't sound anything like this, I can understand why he likes it. I love it too. You should listen to it. My next recommendation is Harry Nilsson with Nilsson Schmilsson. This is not an album I'm as fond of compared to Harvest, and yet I still give it a lot of points for creativity. It has a lot of different sounds and genres and influences going on as well. I also think it has a very similar irreverent, kind of sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek attitude that Mac brings on his early albums. So definitely give it a listen if you're looking for something a bit more unique. Next up, Emmett Rhodes with his self-titled album. This is a lot less well-known than these others that I'm talking about. He was called the one-man Beatle back in the day, Emmett Rhodes, and I think you'll see why if you listen to this album. It's a bit folkier, a bit softer than this other stuff, but I still think it's really great. Apparently the alternative title was Home Cooking, which really sounds like a Mac DeMarco type of thing. I mean, he's cooking up something good, right? Last up is Bruce Springsteen with The River. Last up for part 1, oh my god, I'm just getting confused. In his What's in My Bag interview, Mac said he took a lot from this project, especially the cover art, and I'll admit I'm not a big Bruce Springsteen fan, but I gotta give him credit. He has a unique voice, he has a distinct songwriting style, and he has a cult following for a reason, so I guess I can see the appeal. 4 more 70s albums. First up, Steely Dan with Aja. Steely Dan, I think, are the closest we've ever had to like pop music machines. I don't think there's really much soul in their music, but I cannot deny that they make groovy, catchy songs. They just made pop music into a science, and I feel very good when I hear this. Mac has called it perfect. Even if it's a bit robotic, it is very, very good. Next up, an album that goes the total opposite end of the spectrum in terms of emotions, I have The Modern Lovers with their self-titled. This album is far less refined, a bit more lo-fi, a bit proto-punk as a matter of fact, but it's got so much emotion. It's like a very wholesome youth album. It's got some ridiculous lyrics, and I totally see why Mac is a big fan. Next up, we have John Lennon with the Plastic Ono Band, another album that I think has some really great moments, even though I think it's a bit inconsistent. Nonetheless, John proved that he is a very good musician and makes some really cool music, even without Paul McCartney or the rest of the Beatles, and I think if you really listen to Mac a lot, you will not be surprised at all to learn that he is a fan of this album. My last 70s album, now number 8, Shuggy Otis with Freedom Flight. I don't really hear people talk about Shuggy Otis much these days, and that's really a shame because he's awesome. Mac has said that he is the freshest mofo around and that he would be his dream collaborator. I think this album really blends funk and rock in a really cool way. There's some really awesome blues stuff and some soul stuff. It's an amazing album. I was really blown away given that I didn't love some of the other Shuggy Otis that I had heard before this album, but I cannot recommend this one enough. You have to check it out. Okay, next up I'm talking about what I'm going to call basement pop. Mac DeMarco is often called bedroom pop. I don't really agree with this characterization because I don't think he really sounds very similar to the other bedroom pop, albums or whatever, but I get that he's lo-fi, I get that he's kind of playful and did a lot on, a low budget and stuff, so I think it's relevant to mention some of the influences that he had on this recording style from the previous generation, guys who were not making music in their bedrooms, but in their basements with cassette recorders and other equipment stuff. I'll admit I'm not really very versed on production equipment or anything, but these guys made some interesting stuff on some lo-fi technology. Mac likes it a lot. It's worth shouting out. So first up, R. Stevie Moore with Glad Music. This guy is the godfather of DIY recordings. He's made hundreds of albums in his basement. He played like every instrument on of them. This album is a lot easier to listen to than I really expected, if I'm being honest. It's kind of jangly pop, which sounds a bit Mac DeMarco-y. Even though this is an at-home recording and he's kind of labeled an outsider artist, I still think this is a pretty cool album to listen to. I will return to this before too long. Give it a shot. Next up, Ariel Pink, Pom Pom. Now, it would have been more accurate to include an earlier Ariel Pink album, but I can't make it through a Haunted Graffiti era album. I just can't. I'm sorry. Ariel Pink definitely is in the lineage of R.Stevie Moore. He's called him his mentor. They've collaborated. That being said, I think Pom Pom is easier on the ears. I think it's much more fun to listen to, and I think it kind of fits within the 2010s indie ecosystem like 2 and Salad Days do, so that's why I'm recommending this album. My next one is another guy kind of in the same ecosystem, John Mouse, Love Is Real, a friend of Ariel Pink. He feels a bit weird to include here for a different reason, because this music is very heavy and emotional, whereas Max is characteristically light and kind of laid back and stuff. The production's also very heavy here, as opposed to Max kind of laid back, acoustic, mellow stuff. Yet Mac has called him an influence, and I think that this sounds similar enough to Pom Pom so that if you like the former, you'll like this as well. Now, my last inclusion in this category doesn't really belong with any of these others, but I'm throwing it anyway. Ween with The Pod. Ween definitely are lo-fi. These guys have some really weird stuff going on this. I've listened to thousands of albums, and this is one of the weirdest I've ever listened to. I'm not really a fan, but I suspect it might grow on me because it's very creative. These guys have a cult following, and Mac is part of that cult following, so give it a check. All right, now I'm going back to the 70s, but I'm going to a different continent in the 70s. I'm going to Japan. Mac DeMarco is clearly a big fan of Japanese music from the 70s, and it's not hard to see why. This was a very fertile time for experimental pop. I mean, even around the city pop era, I still think there were some underground artists making some really weird and exciting stuff, and Mac's a big fan of this, and so if you like Mac, you'll probably like this too. First up, Haruomi Hosono House. This is a fun and whimsical album by whom I would consider to be the most fun and whimsical member of Yellow Magic Orchestra. It's a lot more laid back and folksy and mellow and kind of more like Mac DeMarco, honestly, than anything else Yellow Magic Orchestra has made. So even if you like that really electronic stuff like I do, this might not be your thing, but it's worth checking out for sure. My next recommendation is Shigeo Sekido with Special Sounds Volume 2. This is where Chamber of Reflection's melody comes from. So if you've done sample digging or whatever, you would have encountered this before. But the whole album is really fun and worth listening to. I don't know exactly how Mac found this melody and kind of came around to repurposing it, but the whole album is worth listening to. I definitely recommend it. Next up, Ryuichi Sakamoto with Thousand Knives. This album is another really creative album from a Yellow Magic Orchestra member. I was amazed to learn that this came out before anything Yellow Magic Orchestra made. It's really experimental pop. It doesn't sound like the electronic stuff that Ryuichi got big on through that group. It even hints at some of the ambient stuff that he made later, but it's got so much going on. It's just so much, it's so trippy and creative, and man, this album blew me away. My last recommendation is Akika Yano with Taidama. This album is kind of in the Yellow Magic Orchestra ecosystem as well. I think she might have been a collaborator. I think Mac has actually hung out with her as well. I don't love this album as much as I do the other ones on this list, but I still think that it's fitting within the experimental pop of 70s Japan, and you should check it out if you like this kind of scene and era. Okay, last up, I have indie pop of the 2010s, a scene that Mac is usually associated with for a good reason. These sound the most similar to Mac DeMarco's music compared to anything else that I've talked about today. They're more of his peers than his influences, and yet he still draws from these artists. So first up, Conan Moccasin with Caramel. He is also one of the top artists of 2010s indie pop. This album is certainly more psychedelic and soulful than Mac's music, and it's all got a lot of that hazy stuff as well. I've heard people say that they think they hear Conan Moccasin's guitar as an influence on Mac DeMarco's guitar. I can relate to that as well, so check it out. Next up, Unknown Mortal Orchestra with 2. This is way sleepier, I think, than Mac DeMarco's 2 is, but like 2 from Mac DeMarco, this might be Unknown Mortal Orchestra's best album. I like a few songs in this album more than I like others. It's not my favorite, but I still think that it fits within this broader canon and is worth checking out if you like this scene. Next up, on the other hand, I have an album that I did not know about before and loved, Chris Cohen with Overgrown Path. Chris Cohen played with Ariel Pink and Deerhoof, so he has that basement pop DNA in his sound as well. This album came out the same year as 2. I think it's quite a bit less well known than Mac DeMarco, but he really likes it, and I really like it, and you might really like it, so listen. Now, my last up is Home Shake with In the Shower. Peter Seeger, the guy behind Home Shake, is Mac's friend. They played together back in the day, and this also is another one of those indie pop albums from the 2010s that you'll like if you like the rest of it. It's sleepier, it's hazier, but it's still pretty cool, so check it out. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some extra albums, extra jizz jazz, which Mac DeMarco calls his own genre, that didn't make the other categories, but I still think are worth mentioning. First up, Herman's Hermits. This was a British invasion band from the mid-60s. This is what Mac might have sounded like if he had been from that era. It's a lot more wholesome, a lot more focused on like girls and romance and, you know, the type of stuff that people were singing about back then. I certainly don't like it as much as like the Beatles or whatever, but I'm glad I've listened to this. You can hear the influence on Mac DeMarco, and, you know, it was kind of cool to hear an album that was so of its time and yet has some kind of ingredients that sound ahead of its time. My next recommendation is Evan Cheadle with Fault Line Serenade. I don't think this is a very well-known artist, but I think this is a really cool album. It sounds a lot like Mac, especially in the vocals, but a lot more country. It's got some like stoner vibes. It's got some wheezy vocals. The vibes aren't that... Well, the vibes are similar, I suppose, but the sounds are different. But I definitely liked this. I'm really glad I found this. I think I just got this in a Spotify algorithm when I was listening to a lot of country music, so check it out. Next up, I have Tomita Isao. Now, he might have been in either the Japanese category or in the basement pop category, because he belongs kind of in both. The album I'm recommending from him is Clair de Lune, which is a take on Debussy composition, but made electronic and made modern, and it's really interesting. And if you like Debussy, he's one of my favorite classical composers, this is definitely worth your time. My last album in this category is Mild High Club with Skip Tracing. Honestly, this is my second favorite act in the 2010s indie pop scene. This is my favorite, I think, album in that scene, aside from 2 and Salad Days. A lot more psychedelic. You can hear a lot more jazz on this as well. I think Mild High Club really came to their own on this album, their sophomore release. I cannot recommend it enough. All right, this is it for my recommendations on Mac DeMarco's sound, on the soup that is 2 and Salad Days. I think those albums really are kind of sonically, I don't want to say identical, but I think they really came in the same creative era, an era that I really love, my favorite era of Mac's career so far, even though I'm still very much looking forward to seeing him continue to develop and mature and evolve. I think it's amazing that someone with a very characteristically laid back and mellow sound has so much nuance and so much influence going on. Even though he might not be taken as seriously as he should, perhaps, given that he's, you know, like almost like markets himself as someone who's careless or reckless or apathetic. Mac DeMarco is very clearly a serious musician. His music deserves to be taken seriously. He listens with an acute ear to a lot of different stuff, and it was a real pleasure to go back and explore all of this. So I highly recommend you check out some of these albums if you like Mac DeMarco and you wonder how he kind of arrived at this really unique signature sound. And as always, thank you so much for watching my channel. Please like and subscribe to Album Soup. I have lots of other albums coming. I'm not planning to mix up this format because I really like what I'm doing here, and I hope I will build an audience slowly, but I appreciate you watching this as a very early member of my audience, and I hope you're doing well. Thanks so much.